Welcome to the daily briefing. Happy briefing. Matt is in his summer finest today. I like it. I have a few items at the top, and then I will open it up to questions. First, I'd like to welcome a group we have in the back. It is a group of journalism students from the American University in Cairo. They're wrapping up internships in Washington this summer, so welcome. We're really happy to have you here. I once, many years ago, also did a summer internship in Washington, so I hope it's been enjoyable, and I hope you find today interesting. Also, just feel free to ask questions if you want. I'm sure I'll get to all of you as well. A couple other items at the top. A travel update. The secretary, speaking of Cairo, is in Cairo, continuing to work to see if we can get to a ceasefire. I expect he'll be making remarks later today. As you know, that can always change, but that's the plan as of right now. So that's the latest update I have from them. He has also made 13 phone calls as of today. He ended up making a total of 25 yesterday. Very busy talking mainly about his attempts to help broker a ceasefire in Gaza. Two more items at the top. The first, I think you've seen that authorities in Mali have found the wreckage of Air Algeria Flight AH5017 in the Gassi region of Mali. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families and loved ones of the 6 Spanish crew members and at least 110 passengers from Algeria, Belgium, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Canada, Egypt, France, Germany, Lebanon, Luxembourg, Mali, Nigeria, Romania, Switzerland, and Ukraine, who lost their lives. On behalf of Secretary Kerry and the American people, we extend our deepest sympathies and condolences to all of those affected by this terrible tragedy. We didn't talk about this yesterday, but no U.S. citizens were on board. And final topper. On Monday, we will mark the opening of the Presidential Summit of the Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders here in Washington, D.C. The Washington Fellowship is the flagship program of President Obama's Young African Leaders Initiative, or YALI, a signature effort to invest in the next generation of African leaders. The YALI Summit will bring 500 of sub-Saharan Africa's most promising young leaders together with U.S. officials, eminent entrepreneurs, and civil society representatives for 3 days of workshops and events. Secretary Kerry will welcome the young African leaders to the summit on Monday morning. Later that day, President Obama will hold a town hall. First Lady Michelle Obama will deliver remarks at the summit on Wednesday, July 30th. Fellows will also hear from U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Samantha Power, USAID Administrator Raj Shah, and many others. We are proud as a department to have a role in supporting these extraordinary young people as they continue their role as catalysts for growth and development in their communities and countries.
Sorry, just logistically, are all those things here?
I do know they are not. It is taking place at the Omni Shoreham Hotel in Washington, D.C.
Good. So we don't have to worry about the president showing up here and going through all the additional
I know there's
security.
a lot of additional activity happening here around the summit, but I don't
but not for this specifically, correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Let's start with the Middle East, although there's a lot of Ukraine today, too. You mentioned the 11 calls today and 25...
13 calls today, so far.
13 calls today, 25 calls yesterday, and that he's expected to make remarks soon.
Today. I didn't say soon. Today.
Well, I was going to ask you, his word from Cairo is about the half an hour, 45 minutes from now, or do you think that's too optimistic?
I think that's a little optimistic.
Okay.
It's getting late there, but...
What is he going to say? Well, or is that still TBD?
I'm not going to preview what he's going to say. I think if he, when and if we have announcements to make, I'll let him do that. Well, he's continued to consult with the different parties about achieving a ceasefire and the path forward, and I don't have anything to preview from what he will say today.
Okay, is it correct then that the effort to get a ceasefire continues? They're not there yet. Is that correct?
As of this moment, the effort
continues. As of
continues,
the moment that you left your office.
But I am not going to outline what he will say later today.
Okay. Do you have any comments on the situation on the ground as it is today?
In terms of what?
Well, in terms of whether you think that your calls for restraint from both sides, whether your calls for Hamas to stop firing rockets and for Israel to show restraint on the civilian casualty front have been met, or is the attempt to get a ceasefire an indication that you think that these are still objectives that need to be reached?
Well, certainly we haven't achieved a ceasefire yet, and the hostilities continue on the ground. We've seen rockets being fired from Hamas. We've seen Israeli actions as well. So there are a range of ideas being discussed. They include, ideas being put on the table from various interested parties. Those are still being discussed, and again, I think the Secretary will update everyone on where that stands.
Okay, so what he probably won't know about, though, is this continuing, or maybe he does know about it, but you're I think, in a better position to answer questions regarding still about this FAA ban. And
I'm not sure what questions there are that remain.
Well,
it looks like you have a whole list.
No, this isn't my list. This is
whose
Senator
list is
Cruz's list.
Happy
so let's run through.
You're happy to do his bidding today.
No, it's just that he's asked these questions.
Okay.
I don't want to think of him doing his bidding, but
Okay.
he's asked these questions. These are the questions that he
let's run
says
through them.
He wants answered to release his holds on all of your nominees.
Our nominees in a department that didn't actually put in place this travel warning and the flight notice.
Be that as it may.
Well, I think that is a crucial point in this discussion.
Well, okay, yes, but the point is that this is how Senator Cruz has chosen to express his
I understand that. I'm just saying it's
thus,
illogical.
Thus it is,
but,
well, it may be illogical, but it is a fact.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
allowed to comment on that.
So
fact,
yes,
though.
yes, you are.
That is, I think, my job.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yes, you are. Okay, one.
Do Senator Cruz's
question. Question number one. Was this decision a political decision driven by the White House?
No.
For instance, who was this decision made by? A
The
career
FAA.
official, a political appointee, or someone else
Well,
at the FAA, State Department, or White House?
It was made by the FAA. I'm sure they can speak to who specifically at the FAA made the decision.
If the FAA's decision was based on airline safety, why was Israel signaled out when flights would be permitted into Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Yemen? Although I would point out before you answer that I'm not aware of any American airlines that fly to Afghanistan, Pakistan, or Yemen, other than the Air Force.
There's also a full list of notice to airmen online. I actually tweeted a link to it yesterday.
Okay.
I think he's actually put forward some incorrect information about where there are and aren't notices. There are some, for example, over parts of eastern Ukraine. He said they were none for Ukraine. There are, in fact, some. So there's a whole list online where they stand. The FAA makes those decisions based on when there is a potential threat to airliners landing at certain airports or flying over certain areas. There is a whole very comprehensive list online.
Is there a ban?
So Israel is not being singled out here.
Okay. But is there a ban on U.S. airlines flying into Afghanistan? Should a U.S. airline decide
I'm happy to check
fly?
on what the latest notice is that the FAA has put out on that, but I'm not aware, as you said, of any airlines who do.
Okay. Number three,
Mm-hmm.
what was the FAA's safety analysis that led to prohibiting flights to Israel while still permitting flights to Ukraine? Again, I'm not sure any U.S. airline flies to Ukraine,
Well,
but where a commercial airline flight was just shot down
Right.
with a
And the
boot
area
missile.
where it was shot down, there is a notice to airmen that the FAA has since put in place. So I would take issue with the second part of that question from Senator Cruz. And the first part, they can ask the FAA, but they've said that they take into account information about safety, and that's it, and that's how they make their decisions.
Number four, what specific communications
We're only
occurred?
on 4. How many are there?
Yeah, sorry.
okay.
And I apologize to everyone. But
okay.
this has been a big issue.
I understand.
So what specific communications occurred between the FAA and the White House? And between the FAA and the State Department?
Well, I certainly can't speak to communications between the White House and the FAA, given that
Okay.
I'm not part of either of those.
So State Department and FAA.
As I said, we had from my perspective, right, which is a communications perspective, we had a heads up that it was going to be announced. I can't speak to everyone in the building.
Okay. Why were any such communications necessary if this was purely about airline safety?
Well, I think, as you said, 2 points. First, it's important. We like to give other agencies heads up when we're about to announce things that might impact them. So I tend to give my colleagues a heads up when statements are about to go out.
Okay.
But we've also said that the State Department has at times served as facilitators between the FAA and other countries,
You
not
mean
just Israel.
Liaison.
Well, to
mean-
facilitate contact, because the FAA doesn't always have the same contacts we have
Gotcha.
overseas. And the FAA was working directly with the Israelis to determine the threat. And then one of the reasons they have said they rescinded it was because the Israelis had put in place mitigation. So
All right. And then the last one, and I think I know the answer, what your answer will be to this, because it tracks very closely with question number one, which is was this a safety issue, or was it using a federal regulatory agency to punish Israel to try to force them to comply with Secretary Kerry's demand that Israel stop their military effort to take out Hamas rocket capacity?
how many parts of that can I fact check? So first of all, nobody has demanded anything of Israel. We have said they have the right to defend themselves, period. Second, this was a decision made by the FAA solely based on security, not for any other reason than security and safety of American citizens, American pilots, people on American planes, period.
So
What were the other parts of
That's
that very loaded
Oh.
question?
Well, I mean, well, hold on. Was it, well, you've already answered, was it a safety issue? It was,
It
so
was purely a safety
not
issue.
using it, so, and you would say that it was not using a federal regulatory agency to pressure Israel?
Absolutely
Correct?
not.
All right. There's been an official saying, quoted on various, or at least one news outlet, saying that the situation between around the airport, Tel Aviv, Ben Gurion Airport, between right now and 72 hours ago, is exactly the same. Is that
That's not,
correct?
and
if
again,
that-
I will point to the FAA statement. I know I've been talking about what they've said a lot, but they said that they received two things: new significant information, intelligence that talked about the threat, and second, that the government of Israel took new steps and measures to mitigate the threat. So some of that's not always seen publicly, but they made that their decision based on those two things.
Are you able to describe what those two items are?
I don't have
More
more
specifically?
details about those. The FAA may, but again, I don't.
So
have
in
more
other words,
details.
the situation is not the same as it was 72 hours ago,
Correct.
because even though rockets continue to be fired, the Israelis have both taken new steps or new measures to mitigate the
threat,
risk,
and we've received new
and
information.
they have done a better job, or they have explained themselves.
No. The first piece
better.
isn't about the Israelis. We have received significant new information. I'm not.
Oh, not
detailing-
about the Israelis.
Right,
Not from-
about-
sorry,
about the threat.
Not from the Israelis. Okay.
So
I know you said that
Thank you.
you're welcome.
the secretary is
I'm
going.
sure Senator Cruz will send me a thank you.
Yeah,
as
do you
well.
think that he's going to accept your explanation
I
of this?
certainly hope that he does.
Do you think that what you've just said now in response to my asking his questions will be enough to, or should they be enough to
I
get to,
certainly
for him
hope
to
that,
lift
that it
up?
should be, but if the senator has additional questions, we're happy for him to ask them. We just don't think that should be coupled with a hold on nominees for critical national security positions.
Well, the senator is a difficult person to address, but let me go to the other part. You said that the Secretary of State is going to issue a statement later on today.
I think he's going to do a press avail. That's will hopefully happen later today.
Okay, but a great deal of what his plan is, a quote-unquote plan, for a 7-day ceasefire, humanitarian ceasefire, came out. Do you agree
I
with
would
that?
not confirm those reports, Said.
Okay.
I would be very careful
Right,
believing rumors in the press about what's being discussed. There's a number of different ideas and proposals being put on the table by a number of interested parties, not just the secretary, and he'll talk in more detail about those later today.
Okay, well, allegedly there are three ideas. One of them would allow the Israelis to remain in Gaza, the areas that they occupied in the last few days, to continue to destroy tunnels and destroy, sources of rockets and so on. Would that be one of the ideas that are considered?
I am not going to detail anyway the ideas where you've been talking about or considering. I think he'll speak to this later today.
Okay, and in your estimation, would this plan also include a role for the Palestinian Authority to give it some sort of relevance?
Well, I think the Palestinian Authority will certainly play a role here. They've played a role throughout these discussions, but again, no specifics to outline for you.
Okay, now if I could shift just to the West Bank, a little bit, because there's a lot of flare-ups in the West Bank
Yes.
today. 5 Palestinians thus far have been killed in the West Bank for a demonstration. I mean, they were shot with live ammunition. You have any comment on that?
Well, we are deeply concerned about the increasing violence and protests in the West Bank and would offer our condolences for those killed in both Gaza and the West Bank. We're still determining all the details about what has happened here. I know there's a lot of rumors, but we need to be careful to determine the details and would continue to urge all parties here to exercise restraint. Look, it's clear that these are related to the ongoing situation and conflict in Gaza. Obviously, that's why the Secretary is there to try to get a ceasefire here. So we are working very hard to address that.
Right. I mean, it is an emotional time, but you still subscribe or you adhere to your policy that people have the right to demonstrate peaceably, correct?
Absolutely. We call on all parties to exercise restraint as people are doing so.
That includes the Palestinians under occupation in the West Bank, correct?
That we think that Palestinians should be able to express themselves peacefully.
Yes.
We think everyone should be able to express themselves
Have
peacefully.
you been in contact with the Palestinian Authority President Abbas on this issue, that things are so volatile and
About
they could
the
easily get out
protests?
of control? Yes.
I don't have a readout of the Secretary's conversations. I'm happy to see if we have. I'm guessing that our Consul General Michael Ratney likely has, but I can check.
And my last question on the hospitals. I know I asked you and I asked Jim before and so on. It seems that all the reports, concur and confirm that basically there were no militants, no rockets in these hospitals, yet they were targeted, and the school as well.
Saeed, I think we need to be careful when you use the words like all and confirm. I think what we've seen
Well, I
in
mean,
general, is Hamas has used civilian areas like hospitals and ambulances and schools to hide rockets. Across the board, we've seen that at times, but across the board, I can't confirm that every time the Israelis have said there were rockets in a certain place, we can confirm that independently. So we've seen them use this tactic. Is that always the case in each of the individual instances here? I just can't confirm that.
Okay, well, let me rephrase my question. There are many reports by ABC, NBC in particular, that actually, they went around and they showed there were no rockets. But also, Chris Gunness, the spokesperson for UNRWA, tweeted many tweets saying that there are no rockets, not in the vicinity, no firing was going on, and all these things before
Well,
and
you're
after
talking
the
about
attack.
a specific incident, right? I said
I'm talking about the UNRWA school
right.
at
So
Beit Hanun
ask
yesterday.
about specific incidents. In
Right.
general, we have seen Hamas use this tactic. I still cannot confirm whether there were rockets in this specific school that was hit. We've seen the Israelis speak to this. I think we're still trying to get some more facts about this specific school.
I'm sorry, I said my last question, but this would be my last.
It's okay.
Are you getting any reports from Beit Hanun that the Israelis are not allowing, medics and medical groups, emergency groups, to go in and retrieve bodies and injured?
Let me check on that. Saeed.
Marie, sorry, just now, as you're talking, the reports are coming in from Israel that the Israeli security cabinet has rejected the ceasefire offer. It's all 3 Israeli television networks plus others.
I
don't
love when
think
news
there's
breaks when I'm up here.
I know that there's.
I'm at a
I know-
strategic disadvantage here.
Fair enough, but and I'll clearly, the secretary will speak to this whenever he goes out to speak. But in the meantime, and I don't expect you to have a fully formed answer yet, is this would a rejection of the ceasefire be a disappointment to the secretary and to you by Israel in terms of what you know about the proposal that was out there? I'm not asking you to get into details of it, but clearly you
really
wanted
don't
both
want to
sides.
comment on this in any way, given that I haven't seen the reports and I haven't talked to the team on the ground.
Okay.
I really don't want to comment.
Do you
on
know? Fair enough.
it. Okay.
UNRWA questions.
Yeah.
Do you know if you have come to a or if the better options for dealing with the rockets found in schools has been arrived at?
We've talked to them about some, and I think there are a few options we're still talking about.
I saw that there was a statement from
UNRWA.
talking about how they're going to try to get more people involved.
Yeah.
To the administration's point, given what happened the first time that this happened, or was it last week now? I don't remember. But
Days all run together.
I know. Are those kind of measures that they're talking about? Are those okay with you guys? Do you
yeah,
think
I mean,
those
I
are
think-
enough? Those are appropriate?
Well, I think we have some potentially workable ways forward.
Among them are the ones that were in that statement?
I can
from-
check on the
Okay.
specifics. Matt.
And then just going back to questions that I had asked earlier about the Kadir family, do you know if there's
Yes.
the update on that?
I did check, and I didn't get a huge update here. Let me see what I got. I'm not sure if I actually got any update for you. I promise I did check, though. Let me see what I have. We have raised it, as we said. Matt, I don't think I have an update
Okay.
for you. We didn't, and I know that they did not have a specific number.
All right, and
I
then
do know that.
Okay, and then in terms of, I believe I raised this a couple, 10 days ago or so about this 15-year-old Palestinian American kid who's been held, been detained by the Israelis. Do you have any
I don't.
update on that?
Let me check on that as well.
All right.
Yes.
Can I move away to Iraq?
Anything else on Gaza? Okay.
Okay.
Let's move to Iraq.
Reuters has reported that a tanker loaded with oil from the Kurdistan region of Iraq is near Texas and is apparently heading for a potential buy there.
Well, we are aware there's a tanker off the coast of Florida currently, but our policy here has not changed. Iraq's energy resources belong to all of the Iraqi people. The U.S. has made very clear that if there are cases involving legal disputes, the United States informs the parties of the dispute and recommends they make their own decisions with advice to counsel on how to proceed. So I'd obviously refer you directly to the parties in terms of any arbitration here. I know that's what the stories have focused on.
Are you actively warning the U.S. firms or other foreign governments to not buy Kurdish oil specifically?
Well, we have been very clear that if there are legal issues that arise, if they undertake activities where there might be arbitration, that there could potentially be legal consequences. So we certainly warn people of
Do you
that.
keep doing that now too?
We are repeatedly doing that, yes.
So why? I mean, if you think it's illegal, or they
I didn't say it was illegal. I said there's a legal dispute process here and an arbitration mechanism. There will be a legal ruling on it. I'm not making that legal determination from here.
So you're not sure if it's the sale of Kurdish oil, independent from Baghdad, is legal or illegal?
Correct. So we have said what the United States position is that the Iraqis, people own all of Iraq's energy resources, and that the Iraqi government and the Kurdistan regional government need to reach an agreement on how to manage these resources. There is separately a legal arbitration procedure that can take place if there are legal questions about oil, such as in this case, which is a separate question from what our policy is. And there will be a legal ruling made that's separate from us.
But if you're not sure if it's legal,
Not that we're not sure, it's that there's a separate process.
Yeah, it's a separate process. But it seems to me that you are taking the side of Baghdad, or Baghdad, you're like
Taking
more
the side of all of Iraq. A federal
because
Iraq.
you're saying if the federal government does not approve of it, then you are discouraging U.S. firms or other international buyers.
We said there could be potential legal disputes that arise from it.
But you're warning them, right?
We are warning them that there could be potential legal disputes. These are commercial transactions. The U.S. government is not involved in them. Our position, from a policy standpoint, is that Iraq's oil belongs to all Iraqis, and that the federal government and the Kurdistan regional government need to work together on an accommodation and come to an agreement here. And so that's been our position for a very long time. And we do warn individual entities that there could be legal actions that come from some of these actions we've seen.
So you're saying your position regarding Kurdistan, as it's been reported by a couple of media outlets, has not been softened regarding Kurdistan's
I'm not sure exactly what, in terms of our oil position has not changed.
at all.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, I agree.
In fact, your position is that all oil contracts should be done through the central government. But let me
Well,
ask
and
you
that the central government should
Right.
come to an agreement with the
Right,
Kurdistan
exactly,
government
yeah,
about how to
and pass
go
it.
forward.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to ask you if there's any progress on the forming of the new government. Do you have any?
Well,
can
they
you update us?
selected a president, and
Right.
they have up to 15 days. Excuse me. Whew. Up to 15 days, I think, to name candidates for prime minister, and then after that, I think up to 30 to actually form a government. I can check on the dates, but they have now a speaker, they have a president, and the next step is a prime minister.
Should we read from the testimony that Mr. McCurdy did on Capitol Hill that you are losing patience with Mr. Maliki? You'd like to see someone else take his place?
You ask this question in a different way every day.
Right.
We don't
Exactly.
support, and I give you the same answer. So for consistency, let's do that again today. We don't support any one candidate, any one person to be prime minister. We've said it needs to be someone who is interested in governing inclusively. We've also said we've had issues in the past with how Prime Minister Maliki has governed. But again, it's not up for us to decide; it's up for the Iraqis to
So,
decide.
but your confidence in Maliki's abilities to rule inclusively, as you said it, is
Well, we've had
is-
issues
is
in the
not
past.
ironclad.
We've had issues in the past. Yes.
Maria, I have a question on Cyprus and Turkey.
Okay.
I asked you yesterday, if you remember,
My briefing number 2 yesterday. that I
Yes.
did. Yes.
and you said, I asked you about the cases of Cyprus and Ukraine, and you said there are differences between the two
Completely different.
cases. Okay.
Yes.
But many people, the only thing they see as a difference is that Russia is your enemy and Turkey is your friend. You are speaking against Russia, and you don't say anything to Turkey.
Completely ridiculous. We're not seeing passenger planes shot down over Cyprus. Okay? They're completely different. The UN has in place a Good Office's mission that has an ongoing process under the auspices of that mission to work on the Cyprus issue. We've urged both parties to seize the opportunity to make real and substantial progress towards a settlement that reunifies the island as a bi-zonal, bi-communal federation. And we've said we're willing to assist in any way the parties find useful. Again, these are completely different situations. There's an active conflict zone in Ukraine. Cyprus is wholly different for a number of reasons. The UN is leading this effort here, and we can support that in any way we can.
But Turkey has 40,000 troops in Cyprus right now, 40,000 troops. And I think the Russians, they have a few thousand only. This is
They're
the
in
one
no
thing.
way comparable.
Okay,
I just
but
reject
can I
the
ask you
comparison.
something? Can I ask you something?
You can.
Do you consider...
Do you accept the premise of his question that Russia is your enemy?
Well, no, I would also disagree
Okay.
with that part. I was going through all of the
Okay.
various parts I disagree
But
with.
do you consider what
We
Turkey,
disagree over Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you consider what Turkey did in 1974 against Cyprus invasion or something
I'm
else?
not going to go down the historical path here with you. I said what the path forward looks like, and I would disagree with the notion that Russia is our enemy. Thank you.
Can I ask you something else?
Yes.
The Vice President of the United States, Mr. Biden, spoke 2-3 weeks ago about the situation in Cyprus, and he said this, and I quote, "There is nothing negotiable about two elements. One, no Turkish soldier should have set foot on the island without being invited by the government. And second, there is only one government on the island." Do the State Department share this position to Cyprus?
I didn't see the Vice President's comments there. I just made clear what our position is, and I'm not in the policy of disagreeing with the Vice President. So, with that, what else? What?
Not to
Yes.
disagree with the Vice President.
Yes.
Question about the Washington Post reporter and the other journalists detained in Iran. Has the U.S. interest section with the Swiss embassy in Tehran been able to make contact with them? Do you have anything new on that?
So we are concerned about reports that 3 U.S. citizens have recently been detained in Iran, including Washington Post reporter Jason Rezaian, along with the non-U.S. citizen spouse of one of the 3. So I just wanted to be clear, there are 3 U.S. citizens involved here. We aren't able to comment further at this time due to privacy considerations. As you know, our highest priority is the safety and welfare of U.S. citizens abroad. In general, in any case involving the detention of a U.S. citizen in Iran, we would work with our protecting power, Switzerland, to request appropriate consular services. And again, I don't have further details to share at this time because of privacy.
But does that mean that they have visited and they have not, and the detainees have not signed a Privacy Act waiver? Or does that mean that the Swiss have not yet been notified, or they've been notified but they have not yet been able to go?
I don't have further details about the case to share at this point because of privacy considerations.
Right, but you should be able to say at least whether the Swiss have been notified by the Iranians that these people have been detained.
Well, the Iranians, you've seen reports that the Iranian officials have confirmed publicly some of the detentions.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they've
I don't have further
formally
details, Matt,
gone
that
to
I'm
the
able to
Swiss.
share.
I think that again, the Privacy Act is being overused. I don't see why you can't say if the Iranians have told the Swiss that these people have been
I think I'll let the Iranians
detained.
speak for themselves.
Is the
Yes.
secretary returning tonight to Washington?
We don't have any travel updates. He'll be speaking from Cairo, and I don't know exactly when he'll be returning to Washington.
But if in fact the Israelis rejected what they did, he would have no reason to stay, would he?
Guys, I haven't even seen that announcement. It's happened since I've been up here. I have no predictions about the Secretary's travel. I have given up making those a long time ago. Yes, in the back.
Sorry. The UN says 250,000 Ukrainians have left their homes. Most of them went to Russia. Do you see it as humanitarian crisis, or just, not so long ago, answering a similar question, you said they could be going to Russia to visit their grandmother. Do you see it as a humanitarian crisis as it is now?
Well, I can't confirm those numbers. I quite frankly haven't seen that from a UN report, so I'm happy to fact check that for you and see if we can confirm what we think the numbers are. We know there's a humanitarian crisis here that's been that's arisen that didn't occur there before because of what the Russian-backed separatists have done in the region. Obviously, when there's active fighting, when you have separatists like we've seen shooting down airplanes, attacking innocent people, there's going to be a humanitarian situation. So we have seen that occur. I can see if I have exact numbers for you. I just don't have them in front of me.
Had no role in escalating the crisis. Around 300 civilians have died in the shellings.
I think there's absolutely no equivalency here. Ukraine is a country with borders that Russia violated. It's not about not having a role. If Russia...
Are you saying that still, Kiev had no role in escalating the crisis, moving forward?
Kiev has
It's just Russia. Are you just blaming
Yes,
Russia in the whole?
Yes, because Russia invaded a foreign country. The Ukrainians have a responsibility and a duty to protect their citizens and their territory, which is what they're doing. Russia should de-escalate, move back, and stop backing separatists who are taking down Ukrainian planes, fighter jets as we've seen and are attacking innocent civilians.
Your
also-
ambassador at NATO has said that there are now 15,000 Russian troops massed on the border. Are you in a position to repeat or elaborate on that?
Yeah, we have
on
seen
that?
troops massing at the border as we've seen in the past. I have no reason to disagree with those numbers. Yeah.
Okay. Yesterday, after the briefing in which you said that there was artillery fire
Mm-hmm.
coming from Russian territory into Ukraine, and also that the Russians intended to provide the separatists with
Multiple
heavier
rocket launchers.
right, multiple, with heavier multiple rocket launchers. After the briefing, Ambassador Rice tweeted out very similar or pretty much the same thing, and now this morning.
I wasn't going rogue up here.
No,
I
I
promise.
don't. I'm not saying you were. And then this morning or earlier today, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure you know, the Pentagon also said that there was evidence that these
Yes.
new, heavier, more powerful systems
Mm-hmm.
were going in. I asked you yesterday if you could be more specific, at least about, if you couldn't get into the intelligence about it, if you could identify, say what these systems are. So I'd like to repeat that question, but also ask you if you can if you can elaborate on what it is that makes you believe that this allegation is actually factual and true.
Well, we've seen indications that this is the case. We felt strongly enough to talk about it publicly. I can't underline the information that had led to that assessment. We don't have specifics about what those systems might look like to outline. But again, we're continuing to watch, continuing to gather information, and as we do, we'll attempt to share it.
At the Pentagon, the officials say that these are 200 caliber multiple rocket launcher systems.
I don't have that
Is
detail
that-
in front of me. I don't have a reason to disagree with it. I just don't have that in front of me.
Okay, so
I'm happy to check if I can confirm that.
Okay, 2 days ago, there was a report in a Ukrainian newspaper, which I have here, which talked about tornadoes, which are what are these 200 caliber multiple rocket launcher systems going in to Ukraine from Russia. Is this what the intelligence is?
That's certainly not what we would consider intelligence that underlies our assessments. I also don't have the 200 caliber detail in front of me. I'm happy to check and see on that specifically.
Okay.
Obviously, we make these assessments not based on any one piece of information, even classified information. It's on a range of information. That would certainly not underpin an intelligence assessment.
Okay, well, okay, that's good to know. But you can't offer us what it is
We don't have
aside
more.
from.
We
I
don't.
mean, do you know if this report played any role in?
Let me check on that
I
specific
have
piece.
it for you. I can give
Okay.
it to you.
Okay.
I just got it.
Okay,
so-
let me check on that. And again, I didn't.
But it is from 2 days ago, and it says what you're saying, but it's clearly not an intelligence report. And because in the past you have cited social media and
As
open source reporting,
of the assessment.
I understand that. I just want to make sure that this kind of thing is not the only thing
Having
that
been an
you're going
intelligence
on.
analyst, believe
All right.
me, intelligence assessments are based on much more than just that.
Good.
And
Well,
before we go public with them, we make sure we have multiple sources to back things up.
okay. Well, I mean, I hope so, but the problem is that you
That
can't.
you don't trust us. It's not that I don't trust
not a
you, it's that the world
question
doesn't.
of- it's
I can
not a
almost ask the
question
questions
of-
for you.
No, it's not a question of trust. It's a question of whether you can back up your
We've
claims.
continued to put out information,
I-
Matt. We will continue to do so.
I
It is
know.
difficult, and we're happy to put out as much as we can, and we are trying to. And throughout this conflict, I think you've seen us display a very high level of credibility in terms of what we've said is happening on the ground. The Russians have been the exact opposite. So again, that's not the entire ballgame there, but we will attempt to put out more as we can.
All right, and then and just on the artillery that you talked about, the Russia claims that the Ukrainians are also firing artillery into Russia.
Well, we obviously take seriously reports of alleged Ukrainian fire into Russia. We don't have seen no indications of Ukraine firing back into Russia, so are unable to confirm these reports at this time. Again, the number of Russian troops along the border continues to steadily increase. We have seen that in the past few days, but have seen no indications that the Ukrainians have fired back. We will continue looking into it.
Do you know if there are people there who can, Americans, whether from whatever agency of government, who can say with certainty that
Well,
there hasn't been any firing
We
into,
have a
into
variety
Russia?
of ways that we can see what's going on the ground, variety of different kinds of intelligence, not just of the human variety, but of a number of different varieties. I'm not going to say which, if any of those, we're getting information from. Not going to go into that in any way.
All right, but just to put a fine point on it, you are convinced that the Russians are shelling Ukrainian positions, and it's Russian soldiers who are doing it, not rebels.
From
or-
locations within Russia.
Okay, you don't know who's pushing the button to fire the,
Right,
but it's from
correct.
Russian territory. So you are
Correct.
convinced that artillery from Russian territory is hitting Ukrainian military.
It's going into, yes,
going into
aiming at
Ukraine,
Ukrainian military outposts.
But you are not convinced. You
We
can't
have seen no
confirm-
indications.
You see no indication that the opposite is true. That
Correct.
Ukrainians are sending it.
Correct.
Is it one incident or two incidents, or
I don't
is
have
this
a
happening?
number.
Or I mean, how many times did it happen?
I don't have a number for you, Saeed. I'm happy to see if we
But
can share
isn't this
that.
like almost like an act of war? Would something like this likely to be brought up at a Security Council forum or
I
something?
don't have anything to predict in terms of where we might discuss this further, but look, we've made very clear our concerns with it.
And then in terms of the sanctions that you, yesterday, I can't remember if this came up in the brief, but the Europeans did.
I think it came up briefly.
Do you have anything more to say about that?
I don't.
Do you have anything more to say about what the U.S. might do now, particularly because you've made some pretty serious allegations about an escalation?
I don't have anything to predict for you. We're looking at a variety of options.
All right, and to date, since this crisis began and since Crimea was annexed,
Seems like a long time ago, doesn't it?
right, you have, the U.S. and Europe to an extent have imposed increasing sanctions on Russia. As a result of those, or as not as a result of those, have you seen any change in the Russian position?
Well, we've certainly seen it have an impact on the Russian economy.
No, apart, I
I was
understand
getting
that. Have you seen, these were steps taken to change President Putin and the Russian
Well,
government's calculus, correct?
I'd make 2 points. The first is we don't know and can't say for certain what he would have done if we hadn't done them, right? If he would have taken even more escalatory steps. We did see a number of troops amassing on the border months ago that then were gradually pulled back. So again, you can't prove a negative, right?
But you also
but we
can't
haven't
prove that he wouldn't, that it
That's right.
wouldn't have escalated either. So
That's
there are
right.
two
No.
sides to that
I'm not
coin.
saying. I'm just saying we can't assume that he would have done that. He's done as much as he would have done regardless. But we haven't seen a de-escalation like we need to in eastern Ukraine, or of course in Crimea, which we still believe is part of Ukraine. So clearly, it hasn't changed what President Putin has done in that regard. But we're going to keep working at it. And sanctions work best the longer they're in place. So.
So the fact that Russia has not only not changed its approach, according to you, but also escalated its activity, as you've been saying over the last couple of days, does not give you pause about whether sanctions are effective.
No, not at all. They've been incredibly effective against the economy. And again, President Putin has a choice here. He can increasingly become isolated from the international economic system if he wants to continue this escalation, or he can do the opposite.
All right, and then on the crash investigation, do you have anything?
Let me see what I have on that for you. Hold on 1 second. We do support the efforts of the Dutch and the Australians, who have offered their support to the Ukrainians to secure the site with a small police force. It's my understanding that I think they'll be arriving in the coming days. Obviously, we think that more needs to be done. I think it's a contingent of around 40 Dutch police officers will arrive in the coming days. So obviously, that's a key concern right now, is securing the site and, of course, returning the rest of the remains to their families.
So as far as you're concerned, at the moment, that's still a work in progress. That has not been done. Okay, and then my last
It's been
one.
partial, but there's separatists are still in control of the area. We're concerned about looting. So.
My last one on this, a bunch of German lawmakers had talked about maybe having the World Cup stripped from Russia's supposed to host the next one. Does the administration have any position on whether?
I do not know if we have a position on that. I'm happy to check.
Could you check? It's been the idea has been rejected by FIFA, but I'm just
Yeah,
wondering if you have a position.
I'm happy to check.
Okay, thank
What
you.
else? Let's move on. Yes, Saeed.
Yesterday, about Graham Phillips, British journalist, yesterday you were saying that Kyiv tells you that they don't have him, and now Ukrainian news agencies are saying that he was interrogated by the Ukrainian security service, and he was kicked out of the country for 3 years.
We don't have any independent corroboration of that. We've seen those reports, but we cannot confirm that. We're still checking into it.
But do you believe everything that Kiev tells you?
No, we independently corroborate things, and I said I couldn't independently corroborate that. Yes?
Move on to the Algerian
You can, Saeed.
airliner. No one has asked about it. Do you have any information on what happened? I mean, could it have been shot out of the
Well,
sky?
the cause of the crash has not yet been determined. Preliminary reports indicate that severe and dangerous weather in the region may have played a part. We have our embassies in Algeria, Mali, and Burkina Faso are in close contact with authorities there, and we've offered to assist, but it looks at this point like it may have been weather.
Okay, so more than likely it's an accident.
More than likely, yes.
Were there any Americans on the flight?
No, there were none. Anything else? Yes, in the back.
Thank you. Assistant Secretary Tom Countryman will be traveling to Korea next week for another round of talks to revise the 123 agreement. And the main sticking point in these negotiations has been the U.S. reluctance to allow South Korea to enrich uranium or reprocess spent nuclear fuel. And earlier this month, Dr. Henry Sokolsky, who is a renowned non-proliferation expert, told the House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing that it is very unfair and even reckless for the United States to allow Japan to enrich and reprocess while banning South Korea from doing so. So my question is, why do you treat these two important allies differently? And what is the difference between Korea and Japan in terms of proliferation risk?
Well, they're both very close allies, and I don't want to get ahead of the conversations that Mr. Countryman will be having on the ground. I'm happy to check with him and see what the latest status of the discussions are. I'm not sure I would fully agree with your characterization of what the sticking points are and how they remain. I just want to check that with him, and if we have more details we can share ahead of his trip or during his trip, we'll get back to you with them. Yes, anything else? Everyone, have a very nice weekend. We will see you next week.